All right, and we're live.
Excellent. Awesome.
So yes, we're
So,
going to talk a little bit about the Mutant Epoch here. Andrew, I don't know if you seems like you're a little bit more familiar with it than I am. So
well, I first actually got introduced to the Mutant Epoch actually through a review. I don't know if you know about Tetsubo, his channel. Yep, that was actually the first that I got introduced to it. Probably about, uh, well, a couple of years actually now, I think. It's been out for at least a couple years, and I think his review went up maybe last year. Um, I do have actually a fair amount of experience and never played in it. Have GM'd, and there's it definitely, for me, at least with my experiences, I used to play. Um, my friend, his family, they used to have a copy of the old first edition Gamma World. Okay, and this thing was like, I mean, the ideas in it were just it was so a 1950s sort of look at like, or at least maybe a 1970s look at what the future was going to be like, and it was really funny, but um, the system was kind of clunky though, like, I mean, it was one of those sort of early games, so it wasn't that great, but I feel like the Mutant Epoch kind of, it takes all the great stuff that was in the flavor that was in there and kind of makes it a more manageable, less clunky system.
more palatable.
Yeah, because the character creation, it might be long, but I feel like the system is actually fairly good. So at least that's been my experience with it. So.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that because Tetsubo is actually the one that actually Rhaegar the Dragonborn. Hopefully he'll be joining us here in a little bit. He mentioned that Tetsubo did a review of it, and then I checked out Tetsubo's review, and yeah, he sold me on it. And it's funny, if you look on the Mutant Epoch, I don't know if it's on their main page, I think it is. On the side, it actually has Tetsubo's review, a link to it, and
It
it's pretty
does.
cool.
I think they're fairly the company that does it. Outland Arts is actually a fairly they're a fairly small company. I think they've really only gotten a start on things. So yeah, I think like the minute his review came up, they're like, oh man, we have a positive review. Let's put this in. So
Right.
yeah, it's yeah. Um,
So
uh,
Jason, you've joined us.
Um, I think I have. I'm trying to get this thing to display right.
yep, you're
Can
well.
you see me, or what do you see?
I cannot see you right now. I can hear you just fine. Your little emblem's just coming up. If you
Yeah.
if you go on the top, there's you can adjust your bandwidth usage. You can put it down to audio only if you need to. I usually have it on the one right before then.
Okay,
Um,
let me try that. It should. I mean, I have the button clicked for video. I mean, it's not like
mhm.
unclicked. I'm not sure why it's being stupid.
Did you say you recommended the medium limit bandwidth medium?
I recommend. I usually do the one right before audio only. That way I can, it's not too great, but I can at least see, people's expressions and whatnot. Just so it cuts out less, because obviously, the higher you have, the more likely it is to cut out, and the more often it'll cut out.
Okay,
Let me
yeah,
try
I'll
one
keep it
other
around here.
thing here.
Nice.
Yeah, like right now when I'm trying to look at the settings, they're not even coming up. Like the visual, I can see the little thing that's explaining what it is. There's inevitable weird things going on Google Hangouts.
Yeah, it's all mysterious how this all actually works. It's like are there like are there magical rituals that are set over to make this work? No one
Yeah,
really seems. Yeah.
Huh.
totally. So how was your game that you ran of the Mutant Epoch? How did
Well,
it go?
let's see. I ran two different games. They were both sort of short-lived, but that wasn't really the fault of the game. That was more an issue with players. Um, but I would say they both went very well. Um, One of them in particular, I thought I actually used. I used the some of the stuff that was out of the regional book, and that's stuff in there was very helpful. I kept it to a small region, kind of kept it sandboxy. It ran very well in my opinion. Really the longest, again, the longest part is making the characters, but it's one of the funnest parts of the Mutant Epoch. I think a lot like these games where you randomly roll up characters like that or stats, it does kind of challenge your role-playing ability, because you have to really think like, okay, so now I got this. Now I need to see, what am I going to add to this? What sort of background am I going to add to this sort of character? Yep, we got your picture now.
Yes, we can.
I had to turn off another program that was using it. Now I think it should work. So.
Your cyborg life support program, your backup.
That's exactly right. Nice. Stupid box. Sorry, I'm trying to figure this stupid thing out.
Yeah, play with whatever you need to. Like I said, I'm pretty new to Google Hangouts too, so. And this is live, by the way, Jason. You just immediately, sign off.
I just leave. I'm just out of here.
And that was the last anyone ever saw.
Gotta stay off the grid.
Totally.
Or he suddenly covers up a body that's behind him. Oh crap!
Oh shoot! I forgot about that. Yeah, the bodies.
So when you ran the game, you went pretty balls to the wall as far as like I like how Tetsubo, and I think it says in the game too, how you can really how far you want to blow out, how far into the future you want to go, and how crazy you really want it. How did you really go all the way with
Yeah, I'm trying to think about how I can really accurately describe this game. It's like if you follow it by the way that I followed it by the way the book kind of lays out the setting, for the most part, and you kind of if you want to have it even a modicum of realistic, you have to put it in the future, because you have genetically altered races, you have you have cyborg technology, you have space travel, you have like all this sort of different stuff. And you have to put it somewhat in the future, so it's not like something like it's not like like The Walking Dead sort of thing, where it's like this could happen any day, like this any day now this could happen. This there's certain at least if you're going to run the setting as it is, there are certain to have, like I think one of the things he mentioned in his review is like if you're going to have cyborgs, in this sort of post-apocalyptic campaign, you have to have these. It almost needs to be like I'm trying to remember Judge Dredd, I believe. You kind of have to have it sort of like that setting in terms of you have to have some pockets of where society is still happening, where high technology still exists, or else you can't really have cyborgs. That's you need some pretty special training for that. Oh, I'm sorry. For some reason, the audio is cutting out. I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Okay. Yes. I
can't hear you either, John. Stupid audios.
I don't know if anyone knows Warhammer 40,000, but we need to get like the tech priests in here to sprinkle some incense on the connection.
My only experience is I have the Space Hulk game that they came out with a couple years ago.
Yeah. Sorry,
I haven't played the actual thing though.
Totally different tangent. No, the only Warhammer 40,000 I play is the role-playing game. That was the only stuff I play. I don't play miniatures. But anyway, back on topic. Mutant Epoch.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
yes.
Now we can hear you.
Cool.
Yes, your question. Sorry, I'm sure you had one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was just saying that yeah, you have those one or two mega cities,
Yeah.
um, in the whole world, maybe,
Mhm.
where either that or have, depending on how far you go in the future, maybe, the cyborgs are completely their own. They've
Mhm.
split from all,
Mhm.
all the rest of, the organic life to sort of do their own thing, and
Yeah.
they harbor maybe, maybe they're the ones that harbor 90% of the technology in the world.
Yeah.
Hmm.
The way they kind of, at least in the setting, what they've done is they say that there are a couple of these pure strain sort of holdouts, these unaltered humans who still possess some high technology, who have basically these slave races to them. And that was kind of the way it happened before the apocalypse actually occurred. Is they had these races that served them. So like cyborgs were one of them, um, mutants were another, and
Bioreplicas.
clones and bioreplicas. Yep, these were all sort of, they traded them almost less than humans, certainly.
Right, right. They were conveniences. They're like a washer or a dryer or a
Yeah,
TV, pretty
exactly.
much.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally.
Um, and so yeah, that's kind of the way they present it in there. So usually, I think at least in the core setting, the cyborgs are usually like a lot of them are either they're manual labor workers for pure strains, or they are or they work or they're in the armies of the pure strains. So um,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, but I'm really excited for character creation. I absolutely, I never got a chance to, so it's kind of like one of those sort of things where it's like, um, it's so cool being able to piece out, like, it starts almost form in your mind the idea of your character as you're rolling. Um,
Totally. Well, I'm the kind of GM, that I suppose, I really like character driven. Not all the time, but in general, especially for Chronicles, for things that are, long running, I really prefer character driven stuff. So, for on the storyteller's end, from my end, yeah, it's totally the same. That's like the main ingredients in the stew. What you're cooking is the main characters, or it should be. It shouldn't, be whatever preconceptions I have going. Uh, in my opinion.
Now, one thing I will warn you about the Mutant Epoch. I like it quite a bit, but do not come into the game expecting balance. Okay, this is like it's not fourth edition D&D. There is not anywhere close to a resemblance to balance whatsoever. You can roll up a character who is a super soldier commando ninja who's just he has all this technology and he has an M16 and well, maybe not quite that much, but he starts with so much, and then sometimes you can just roll up a slave who has nothing but the shackles on his, they're still cuffed to him, and
And not only that, but he's a slave of pleasure, whatever that
pleasure,
entails.
pleasure.
That's actually in the book. That's one of the things you could roll up. You're
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
a clone of or a bioreplica, comma
Pleasure
pleasure.
clone.
This
Yeah.
was this was actually a question I had for you, because this is kind of an important one. The Mutant Epoch is a pretty it is in general. It doesn't have to be this way, but there are definitely some very mature sort of themes that are involved in it, like slavery, you know, uh, sexual slavery, various other types of slavery, uh,
Right.
and
And
pretty
and and
yes.
and to and I don't believe that it's all, entirely gratuitous either. I think that it plays into the real. For example, a lot of the mutants it talks about have a lot of them, or a lot of these races in general, I guess, like you say, they are sort of, the slave races of the pure humans. But now a lot of those seek to, wipe the pure humans off the face of the earth, either by mating with them and creating, more bestial humans, or altering them into cyborgs, or mutants, having, intermingling with pure humans, or of course just executing them, I suppose, is easier still. But not that. Of course, it's not for every player, and it should be handled with a certain amount of gravitas. But I believe that a lot of the darker stuff in the game really does, fit into the set. I don't think it's there just to like, ooh, this is fun stuff to play around with.
No, I don't feel like that way anyway. I think, honestly, if you're going to take... there are some things that are definitely not realistic about the game. There's some things that are super powery. But, on the other hand, I think it does take a sort of realistic thematic stance. What would it be like, after all this crap has gone down? There's going to be, all this, there's going to be, it has slavery come back, make a strong comeback, have all sorts of brutal, nasty, disgusting stuff that rears its ugly head once people get very desperate. The other thing I wanted to say too, though, about the other thing is, the mutants. Honestly, the humans. They might have all their really good technology, but there's barely any left. Pure strains are in significant decline. They are a dying race. They're not, at least in this game, that's kind of what the core setting says is they're a dying race. All other races are pretty much on the incline.
Hello.
Hello. Sorry.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing alright, thank you very much. How's it going?
Welcome.
Welcome. You're probably getting set up, so I doubt you heard earlier, but it was actually to give credit where credit is due. It was on your channel where I first heard about the Mutant Epoch. And then I checked out Tetsubo's video, and here we are.
When I went, boom, this book.
Yep, there we go. You sold me.
Yeah, it's it's funny. Yeah, I was just talking about how Tetsubo was the one who, I saw his review on it. And
to be fair, Tetsubo sold me on it as well.
Yeah, he was good. He was good at selling it. But you can tell he has a real passion for this sort of setting. This is his little child. This is his setting, his go-to sort of thing. So,
right, yeah, you can totally tell he's the next video. I just whipped up a character because I got excited about it.
I did too. Yeah.
Well, I've ran and own, not primarily, but over half of the books that I own, for better or worse. Not really bragging here, but Our World of Darkness, and a lot of my players joke that I'm a fairly unforgiving GM, and I'm always into fairly dark stuff.
You came to the right place.
I just wondered why there was an echo, right, guys? And then I realized I had the actual live stream open on another page there. It's like, why can I hear everyone twice?
Nice.
Just to explain why I looked really confused for a second.
Yeah, you may want to tone down on the hallucinogenic stuff.
Dude, you either live life to the full or not at all.
Oh yes, there's that in the Epoch too. Lots of that too. Abuse. There's all sorts of crazy stuff in there. So.
I mean, we all see what happened to Heisenberg, but what a life! What an adventure!
Oh man, I'm excited for that prequel. I guess. What is it? A Better Call Saul?
Yeah, Better Call Saul.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's lighthearted because the series is. I actually still haven't finished it. But the series is good from start to finish. I really enjoyed it, but I really liked the first 2 seasons the most just because of the tone. It wasn't. Again, I like dark stuff, but I like still the light. You need contrast,
I think Two Dog puts it best. It's tight.
Which series is this? I'm sorry, I must have missed it.
This is Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad.
Yeah, oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, Breaking Bad.
Sorry,
What season are you
I
in,
have a habit
Monzo?
of going off on a tangent.
Oh, no problem.
Especially when I've got in from work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I hopped right on that too.
Yeah.
No. And I feel also that if you run I don't know, maybe it's just me and my eyes through my perception, but I feel like if you run Mutant Epoch, you know, fairly close, more or less, to the way it is in the book, I feel like it's gonna be pretty comical too. You know what I mean? Like
It
the,
does have.
the amount of people with 2 heads and like 4 arms is.
Do you know what I really love about it though? It's just the book itself. It's just how much art is in there, like compacted in every single page. It's like a little, illustration of something.
It's great art.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I think there's a picture for every single thing described, literally.
Yeah.
Much, yeah.
And it's all by the author. I think it's all.
Yeah.
The
That's
vast
what I want to do.
majority of it is, yeah.
And then, Jason, you're the one that I didn't even look up their website till you mentioned something. You're like, oh, I was looking at the map on their website, and then I looked, and I was all, oh my goodness.
Oh
this
yeah,
is
it's insane.
An obscene amount of material for free. And then, once you get, I guess, the core rules, you get a code that grants you access to even more free.
Yeah, I was going to
GM
say,
stuff.
I got emailed like an access code or something, which I've been on once or twice. But I got this like a year and a half ago, so I've not really had a chance to play it.
Yeah.
My players sort of turned their nose up at it and said it looked weird. I was like, yeah, it looks weird. It's meant to look weird.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think almost the best way, I think honestly, at least from my experience, the way I kind of ran it is, there are parts that definitely are, like out of character, are definitely comedic. But in the game, like when you're actually staying in character, like things will be hilarious out of character. But in character, like I think it's best to keep it somewhat, like, I mean, for them, somewhat 2 heads, yeah, I mean, like that might be slightly unusual for them.
It's pretty useful, though.
Oh, yeah. But at least...
I like the fact... Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I like the fact that the book actually like talks about that. It doesn't like just breeze over the fact that a massive hulking mutant with like, pincers for fingers and a head that looks like Shania Twain like won't turn a few heads. They actually say like, if you play that character, you're gonna have a bad time in the towns. You're gonna have issues.
The bestial humans are way worse too, though, because I think the way they sort of lay it out is it seems like mutants are probably the most common race. And bestial humans don't typically venture into cities, and some of them are, like, hideous to someone with a human sort of mind. Like, these spider-human creatures, hybrids, are like something out of people's nightmares. So, yeah, people, it describes, I love that part, how it describes, well, if you are a partial spider-human, people are not going to want you to come through the gates of their town. They are probably going to shoot you.
Yeah, it makes appearance not such a laughable trait or attribute or whatever. It makes it like, oh yeah, appearance is actually something that I want to take into consideration. Or if I don't, then it's going to be a conscious thing,
But that's the thing, like you could roll really bad on the creation tables, but at the same time it's pretty awesome because that means you're going to have an absolute beast of a character, but he's going to have some other social issues which you just can't ignore.
The guy
I find hilarious
while you go into town, Although that's kind of dangerous, honestly.
Like since I haven't had a chance to run it, I don't know if mechanically it is a balanced game. I don't think it's based on anything. I think it's a custom system in itself.
No.
He was just saying how unbalanced it actually is and can be. We were talking about that earlier.
It's honestly, out of all the games I've played, it's like the farthest from, like, there's 4th edition on one end, and then there's on the other. Okay, it's
Are you talking like Epic tier 4th edition?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's no, like, it's not, it's almost like they specifically did not want balance with the characters. They were going for no balance because it lays it out where it's like, yeah, you could roll a slave, or you could roll a super, you could roll a cyborg super soldier on the other hand, so no balance to be found here. But I don't know, I guess I did, the theme, I guess I don't so much mind. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I normally do look for a modicum of balance in my games. I swear it's true. It's just this one breaks all my rules. Like I normally like to pick out my characters very specifically and pick out their stats. This game I have no problem with just rolling it out. You know, it's just one of those things, I guess.
That's part of the fun, and it's great for new players, I think.
Oh yeah.
I tried to persuade my group when they were new to try it, but they were like, nah, it looks odd.
And again, you know, for the fitting into, you know, the feeling and the genre of the game, for certain things that works well. You know, in a reality where a lot of these people and races are not products of, they don't choose what they're going to be. It's like, well, you know, the people experimented on your family, and now you're dog people. There's not, I mean, there's not, you can't really have a say about it. Or it's something like Cthulhu. You know, when you roll up a character, it sort of plays into the, you know, the sort of feeling that you know, there's a lack of control right from the start on the flip. But I think it liberates people. It frees people up, you know. Just like when you play games with a high lethality and people know that and they accept they're going to die, it frees up their role playing, like, in my experience,
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Enjoy it while you've got it.
Well,
Yeah.
it means you and your character should be scared of stuff. Like, the world is a very frightening place. Outside of these really tightly controlled areas, you could just step on a landmine and lose both your legs and die.
Oh yeah, some of the hazards are quite lethal, if I recall.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
haven't
yeah.
read through it in a while. Like has been a good few months since I've flicked through it.
So, I think and there's certain areas you should not go. Like if you are starting off, do not go over here. You will be eaten by fish, or you will be sucked into the swamp. Like, you know, it's not this sort of, as I said, it's so opposite of any sort of like game where it's like, oh, I'm first level, I can go wherever I want to do. It's like, no, you need to be really careful about a lot of things. So anyway.
How much do you guys want to play up the lethality of the game? I mean, I guess that question's pretty self-explanatory, but because the book, or at least a lot of the mods seem to, I think Tetsuba talked about it in another one of his videos, all the mods suggest that you know, much like Cthulhu, that it's a good idea sometimes for players to operate two characters. They don't necessarily, obviously, have to all be in the same scene at the same time, and I'm sure most of you are GM anyway, so you'd be fine with it. But, you know, I don't feel like that should free people up more than limit them. So I don't know if you guys want to have two characters each. Again, I guess it depends on how many people, you know, once we talk about schedules and see how many players there are in the game. But I don't know how you guys feel about that sort
I'm
of
fine
thing.
with that.
I mean,
Yeah,
for me, go
I'm
ahead.
cool with one-hit kills. If it happens, it happens, man. You know.
Yeah, I find that there's certain techniques that kind of make it easier. One of the things I'm going to, at least for me, that I was thinking about doing is, you said that one character we could roll up randomly and another one we could pick.
Yeah.
What I kind of wanted to do is find ways that I can have my characters. You could do it one of two ways. You could either have your characters be like, one is like sort of more of a face, or has more of a sort of outgoing sort of personality, where he's the one who's going to be talking more. And then the way you could do it is you could have it that they're connected. Like maybe one of them is, one of them is like a, one of them's a servant and one of them is like the master. Or you could do it like, you could have them be rivals instead, where they just will not talk. They won't want to talk to each other very much.
Totally. Oh, yeah, or maybe depending on how far apart they are. You know, I mean, if one of your characters is this crazy lobster dude on the front, and another one is just a pure stock human, then maybe one never leaves the town because he or she doesn't have any purpose to, and the other one can never enter the town. But you know, obviously they're from
That's
from
awesome.
for player purposes, they're in the same group and they can help each other.
Yeah.
Even if they never meet or know they're helping each other. But I don't know. And that could be kind of cool because I prefer a fairly sandboxy kind of thing because that'd be cool. That could be like a Game of Thrones thing where the party splits and people are doing different things. Maybe not every character is in every session.
One of the things that actually I own I own actually some of the magazines that they put out, and one of the things that one of the articles they had in there was like how to deal with like having all these different characters and how many characters they recommend and blah 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 and all this sort of stuff. And one of the things they were saying is like they recommend 2 characters at the lower levels, or 2 to 3 characters at the lower levels. But as you level up, what you can do is then you can say, well, I'm now 2nd level. I don't need this guy as much anymore. So you can almost split into a second. You take all the characters that are maybe get along better, and then they split into one group, and the other group goes this way. But I think as you said, the main reason I think they recommend the multiple characters is the lethality, because once you lose one character and then you're just sitting there like, okay guys, well, you have a great time, see you later.
And again, aside from dying, I feel like it'll free people up. Maybe, like you said, maybe it just makes sense that in character or maybe out of character as a player, you're like, it's time for this guy to just ride off in the sunset, assuming he makes it through a mission alive or makes it through something alive. And it's like, well, that's fine because you have another character, or you can get another one. It's not like this is my one character and he really doesn't like any of the people in this group, but I know I'm not going to be the type of player that like plays that up to such an extent that it's a roadblock, but like you just keep feeling like, why is this guy's not enjoying it, or maybe you don't enjoy the character. So I feel like, again, that creates more possibilities as opposed to less possibilities.
There's ways to make it work, I think. It's probably more challenging than just having one character, honestly, but you figure out ways to make it work.
Right. But you guys are all experienced. Like I said, you guys have all GM'd before, I believe.
I'm a relatively new GM. I've only been doing it for just over a year now. So, I guess that makes me the intern.
No. I mean, I've been GMing for years, but honestly, my style was not. I mean, I don't think it was anything close to being good. Just a style where I didn't. I ran everything out of modules and didn't really. Not that there's anything really bad with modules, but I didn't actually do a lot of stuff that GMs actually do. I think I was the reluctant GM in a lot of ways.
The path of least resistance.
Yeah. So.
Well. YouTube is like hyperspeed, though. It's like you're going along and you're like, yeah, role playing's fun. I like role playing. Then you watch The Gentleman Gamer and you're like, role playing is amazing. It's what is this?
I wasn't even doing role.
Welcome to the Gentleman's Club.
Yeah.
So.
Not that I'm going to gloat, but I was in his game last week at the UK Games Expo.
Tell us about it.
He's pretty damn good.
Yeah, we don't have to stay on Mutant Epoch by any means. Feel free to talk about whatever.
It was a Numenera game, and I played a graceful Jack who hides in the or explores the dark places, which I thought was a euphemism, but that's just where my brain went. Which is it was a really good game, actually, but it was quite funny for me because I was playing a character who his background was that people didn't want to talk to him. So I was chasing characters around trying to roleplay with them, and they were like, "Go away, Pox, go away." I looked like a leprosy kind of guy. I had blood pouring from my face constantly, and pus and exploding zits and things.
Hey, I think that's a mutation in the Mutant Epoch.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, sounds like someone you'd run into in a waste or something.
I don't want to say too much because I know he's going to do a recap about it, and I don't want to ruin the the kind of the mystery of what happened.
The surprise. I love watching those.
Yeah. That's
It was
it. But
it was a lot of fun though.
it was really good. Yeah, it was. I really like in Numenera. It's really encouraged is you to get into the mood of being very descriptive about what you're doing. Like people like say they've got like a sword or something, But in this game, you could say your sword is made out of scales that glitter in all 25 colors of the rainbow. It makes no sense, but it's high tech, so of course it makes sense in context of Numenera.
It's so far above your character's understanding. You're just like,
Yeah.
oh, it's a rainbow sword, apparently.
Right. I know how to operate it and not kill myself, and that is all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I've wanted to get the book, but I haven't picked it up yet.
It's well worth the read. It's well worth the read, man. Did any of you guys get the? Because I know the Mutant Epoch. I've got the source book for the Mutant Epoch, but there's like an expansion, isn't there, or an additional book you can get, which I've not read. Have you guys had any chance to look through that?
I have all of the books, but that have come out so far just because I really did enjoy it. But I don't think there really are any books that, I mean, there's definitely lots of books for game masters right now, but I don't actually think there's really any more that are geared towards players. Like, there's one of the region guides, which is like a setting sort of book. There, why am I blanking?
Well, that's the thing. I guess they assume that the GM is the player's guide, essentially. The GM is all things to the player.
Yeah.
He is the knowledge center of the universe.
Yeah, I know they have. They eventually will be coming out with a smaller book that will be for players that offers a couple more options. Like I think probably the next one on their agenda, I think, is this one will take the here's the wackiness, and this will notch it up really far. They have one. It's going to be for plant sort of
I've always wanted
hybrid.
to play a plant.
It's fungus. It's any sort of fungus are not plants, obviously, but I think it also includes fungoid sort of humans. I mean, it should be interesting, but I'm curious to see how they will fit them into the setting, because they haven't really talked about, at least in the setting stuff I've read, they haven't really talked about where these sort of people will fit. But it should be interesting. I'm curious to at least read it.
I almost wonder if that wasn't inspired by Tetsubo, because in his review he mentioned that was one of his only two. That and the font size, I think, were his only quibbles. And then, like I said, I don't know if Jason and Matthew were here, but yeah, on the Mutant Epoch website, they've got Tetsubo's reviews, I think, on their homepage.
Yeah, I have seen the link to that, yes,
Really?
back in
Cool.
when I first had a look at it. Because, like I said before, it was Tetsubo that got me interested in this game, because I've always had a thing for Gamma World.
Oh, yeah.
I like the look of it, I like the idea of it. I like the idea you could play like a ninja penguin, and people wouldn't bat an eyelid.
Yeah.
I do like the idea of playing a tree as well. I like the idea of playing like an ent that's like a rogue. Imagine that. That would just be incredible. The sneaky tree.
Well, yeah, you would be sneaky, because no one would. They'd be like, oh. And then you move. It's almost like those comedic things where you have you have the box that moves, and then the people looking. Did that just move? Moves again. It's like the tree.
Nope.
Did that tree just move?
I had something along those lines in my face-to-face changeling game I was running. The characters had come back to their apartment after doing whatever they'd done. No, this is a face-to-face game. And yeah, they'd come back to their apartment or whatever, and their apartment, they don't actually live there. It's just the gateway to the hedge is, so it's all just empty. But they come in, shut the door, and then there's a tree just in the middle of the room. And before any of the players can do anything, of course he comes alive. He's a changeling. He starts talking to him, and then he gives it whatever. The interaction happens, and then he's like, "Okay, bye," and then just stands there, and everyone's looks at him. He's just like, "Oh, uprooting," and then walks off.
The only way that could have been better is if he hit a Back to the Future moment, time to make like a tree. Just ran out of the room. That would have been. That would have slayed me. Yeah, I'm okay with the lethality, guys. I'm completely down with that. In fact, like I said, I was at the expo last week, and I managed to get right to the end of this Cthulhu game, and I played it really well, and I thought, oh, this is going to be good. I'm going to make it to the end. Then one of the players starts to shoot me. Not even that without any particular force. Just manages to hit me in the head, and I was gone. One bullet, one shot.
I've played Call of Cthulhu, and I've played Mutant. I've run Cthulhu, I've run Mutant Epoch, but I don't actually think. Honestly, I think Call of Cthulhu is the most lethal game I've ever seen. At least with the Mutant Epoch, you have a chance of being someone who is really, really actually quite good at combat. Who might you might not want him to be seen, by anyone else, but he's actually pretty good. There's some things that are pretty superhuman, superhero almost sort of abilities. So it's a little bit. It's not quite as Call of Cthulhu is just do not get into combat. Seriously, unless you're interested in dying. Do not get into combat.
But that's the thing, in that game I played in, everyone else had got into a fight and survived. It was just because one of the players flipped their lid and decided that I was the bad guy. Nice. And I wasn't, right? He just took a shot at me, and that was it. It was good night, Mr. Tom. It was see you on the other side.
Yep.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think if you go through a campaign of Call of Cthulhu and the vast majority of your players have not died, you're doing it wrong. You're playing the game wrong. You're either gone completely insane or have been crippled or severely injured. Something might be a little bit weird with your campaign. I think I ran I ran Shadows of Yog-Sothoth, and that's I don't know. By the end, it's almost like they really want someone to die, because then Cthulhu comes out and they have to run the hell away, and it's someone is going to die here. This is Cthulhu. Yeah. About you take it's not sanity damage.
I own that module too, so spoiler to anyone that's playing it. Don't listen now. But yeah, they have one of those. I think it's 6 or 7 different scenarios, sessions. Maybe more than a session, but it takes you around the world to investigating this cult. And one of them, it tells you, speaking to the GM at the first thing it says is this scenario is designed to kill investigators. By this point in time, anyone that still has a character that's been around since the first session is probably feeling pretty high and mighty, and it's time to drive them into the ground. And that's the whole point. It says that's the whole point of this thing, is to clean the slate.
Because you're not evoking the feel you're not evoking the H.P. Lovecraft feel if people are just walking away from all this with nothing to show for it. It's that. At least in my opinion, I don't know. I don't go out of my way to kill. When I played it, I didn't go out of my way to do so, but it's there's some really bad stuff. And if that's just what's going to happen.
Right. And again, it plays into that horror genre because a lot of horror movies they start with the character that was almost killed or maimed or driven insane by the antagonist before, and they come and die on the doorstep, or there's something and then by the end of by the horror thing, then the protagonist is that So it's nice to see the generations of fucked upness, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm never against my players, but I think if I ran Cthulhu, I've never had a chance to run it. I run it in a way that they would wish their characters had died. I'm much more happy to make them go insane than just to kill them. To make them gibbering wrecks.
one of the most horrifying like there's like the spells in there like they're so tempting to use, but you don't want to use them. Like, unless like there's no other choice. But one of them is like really horrifying. Like you put yourself into the body of another person, and like the description. I think there was a description there, and if you do it well, like it's such a horrifying thing to go through. To be, like I don't know.
For you and the person who you're possessing.
Yeah, like really, like it should be like really, like they say, like like just doing this, you take sandy damage, like absolutely, and because like what you're doing is horrible. You're possessing the body of this person, and I mean what else do I say?
You might have good reasons for doing it.
Oh yeah, but I mean it's still fun. Yeah, it's like it's so ridiculously messed up what you're doing. So.
Yeah, that's why I can't remember who did a video on it. I don't know if it was the Gentleman Gamer or Ander or who, but they did a video talking about that. Totally.
Might have been Ander actually, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, he was talking about just in like taking that Cthulhu and Sanity idea and putting it into fantasy setting. Why should even a barbarian or someone that's raised from birth to accept, just bashing people's brains? And sure, I mean that's part of his culture and that's all he's ever known. But does that make him a normal, a sane person as you or I would define it? Probably not. Let alone other people in D&D that, of course, grow up in their town your whole life, and then you go adventure and you witness all these horrible things, but you're still just a happy-go-lucky halfling. It's like, no, I'm pretty sure you'd be mentally scarred, and if you're not mentally scarred, then you're already mentally scarred in the first place.
I always find it weird that in games like that where people kill creatures or other players and things, and the first thing they want to do is loot them. I was like, that's kind of horrifying in itself.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to pick over a dead body. Like that's disgusting. Like, I mean, one of the things, like my girlfriend is a nurse, and one of the most traumatizing things she had to go through was having someone who was even, this person was expected that they were going to die, but one of the most horrifying things to do was to take care of the body. Like that, you don't want to touch it. There's almost no one out there who isn't messed up who wants to go out and touch bodies. Like, it's disturbing.
Or take their pants off and put them on and wear them.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like, that's just, it always makes me take a second and go, really? How'd you know those pants would even fit?
And it's always the double-edged sword, because that's fine and dandy for the players to do that sort of thing, but if their character died and you had an NPC do that to them, just like torture, it's like, oh yeah, let's rip off the goblin's toes, but if the goblins catch you, then if you do that to a player, the player would be like, oh, I feel violated.
Yeah.
It's like you dish it out, but you can't, which I understand. I suppose the same thing goes when you watch a movie. You can watch, the grunts and the orcs, the nameless characters get skewered through, but when the main character does, you're like, it's just kind of, it's a funny mentality. Interesting.
It's a perspective thing, really, isn't it? The good guys and the bad guys.
Yeah, and who you're emotionally invested in.
Which is why I really like the World of Darkness and things like Changeling, is because nobody's really the good guys. Like you're always playing someone who's a little bit, tainted, I suppose, or messed up in some ways. Not always by choice.
Right, and that's what I had a.
Oh,
go ahead.
No, you finish your. I was bringing up.
I was stopping. I had finished.
Oh, okay. No, I wanted to actually ask a question based on World of Darkness, because I'm going to tell you I have almost no experience. I mean, the setting has always fascinated me, like the stuff that they have in there. But I'm actually going to be starting a we're in the preliminary stages of planning a game, another online game actually that I got invited to on Facebook, and it's Werewolf the Apocalypse. And for some reason, like I went out and I bought, because it was like ridiculously cheap at my local game, this used bookstore. I bought the first edition of Werewolf the Apocalypse, which I know is probably very different in a lot of ways to the 20th edition. But I have such a hard, for some reason, I'm having such a hard time coming up with character concepts. I guess, like, every setting that I've done, I've never really done a sort of modern setting. Like, I've never done one that's so close to, I mean, yeah, World of Darkness is really not that close to reality in a lot of ways, but in other ways it really is. I mean,
compared to Dungeons and Dragons, I
right,
mean,
or like Star Wars, or any of the various other games I played. I've never played a game that's actually been so close to like that sort of, other than maybe 1920s. I guess that's the closest.
Any game where law enforcement can at any time be your biggest adversary is in my eyes, a pretty fairly modern game, and that's kind of how, I don't know. That's how I feel. That's what a lot of the things. I have more familiarity with New World of Darkness, but a lot of it is like vampires and werewolves would rather hash out problems amongst themselves or each other rather than get police involved. Or things like that. Once you have your cover blown, or you never really get rid of detectives or investigations and things like that. And I'm the opposite end of the spectrum. I have very, very, very little experience playing or running in any sort of high fantasy sort of genres. I've played almost exclusively. Not that I refuse to. It's just the way the chips fell, I suppose. I've played in mostly modern settings.
I don't know, maybe that's the reason why I've been having so much hard time coming up with character concepts, I guess.
Do you want a great tip for getting good character concepts? It's talk to someone who's never played RPGs before, like a friend or a colleague at work or something, and tell them about this really cool game that you're interested in, and get them to ask you questions about the clans and things. And as you do that, and they say like, "Well, how is this cool? What's this cool?" You start going, "Oh, we can do this really cool thing with this clan," or you can these guys are really cool because they have that kind of weird flaw, and then suddenly you start flipping out and bringing out these little ideas.
Because I know, like I think like the basic idea is you need to start with you start with a human. Okay, like you start with an everyday sort of, person, and then they get transformed, into whatever, or something happens to them that they get changed. That seems to be the sort of basic line of things. But for some, it's not even it doesn't seem like it should be difficult, but it's like I'm having difficulties coming up with a regular everyday person for some reason. Like, I guess that's weird. Maybe I'm trying too hard or something, or I don't know. It shouldn't be this difficult. I'll figure it out.
I can relate a little bit there because like you said, the way most World of Darkness books I've seen describe it, and I'm not saying it's a bad train of thought, but they, like you said, it's think about your baseline, who you were before your first change or your embrace or whatever, and then add the vampire overlay or werewolf to it. But that not to say I've never done that, but I very rarely do that. I tend to do it like what sort of an impact is my vampire going to make on the vampire world, or what sort of a niche in that vampire world am I going to... Sure, maybe my vampire wants to fill a niche in the human world, but still I think more, I don't know. I start at the end product and work backwards. And I do the same, I guess, when I sit down and write campaigns. I tend to, I mean, this is a suggestion I picked up from, I believe, the World of Darkness books, is that you start at the end, your finale or whatever, and then, I want it to end here. And of course, it never does exactly what you want, but whatever picture you have in your head, whatever you want to evoke, whatever protagonist, whatever it is, have that, and then work back from like how logically can we get to this? You know, not as in like how logically, like what breadcrumb should I feed the players, but like just, you know, in each session, how are we gonna progress towards this? You know, it's up to the players to
So
decide how each session is going to be, but I think it's easier myself to work at the end product and then figure out what made this guy tick or why it ended up this way.
Yeah. That's so backwards then the way that yeah, I mean that's totally backwards from what I've always done characters like. That's very interesting. Thank you. Very interesting insight.
Well, I've never played any like werewolf or vampire as of yet. I would like to add that in. You know, I'm always playing new stuff all the time. But for me, if I came up with a character like that, I'd probably write like a little document, you know, which would be, you know, a day in the life of my character before anything weird and untoward happened to him. You know, where did he go to work? What kind of stuff does he do for fun? What kind of relationship does he have with his family? That kind of stuff. Is he stressed? Is he, you know, is he really into sports? That kind of thing.
You could do that with the main character, actually. That's a really good idea for character concept for any sort of role play.
Yeah. Well, just when you were speaking there, I thought it'd be cool to play a werewolf where he was just like, it was just kind of like he's just an average, you know, works in an office kind of guy. He's pretty timid, and then one day he walks home in a city, and someone tries to mug him, you know, and then it all goes to crap. You know, he suddenly comes to and he's covered in blood, and the guy's head's, you know, halfway across an alleyway, and then you think, what do you do in that situation?
Yep.
You know, and then the story begins, or a new chapter. Yeah, you know.
That's fine.
I really like werewolf, the idea of werewolf, because, you know, they're technically trying to do the best, but what they deem as being the best isn't necessarily the best for humanity. You know, they're like a very overpowered, crazy version of Captain Planet. You know, they will save the world, but not necessarily for you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The werewolf, I've never played it, and I've only skimmed through the book, but the Apocalypse, I know there's lots of fans out there. Most people prefer it over the Forsaken, but to me, the Apocalypse is a little too, I don't know. I mean, it's a product of its time, which is very cool. I mean, it's, you know, it's like listening to a music album. It's like, oh, that's outdated, but that's also what makes it cool. It's like a step back. But just the whole eco-warrior werewolf thing is, I don't know if it's a little hard for me to swallow, or if it's, I don't know.
Well, I don't think you really have to play it necessarily that way. You know, you don't necessarily have to be like this sort of Captain Planet sort of thing. Although that, you know, that is very much this. That's very much like, I think when most people think about Werewolf the Apocalypse, that's probably what they're thinking. But I think it's more about like. Yeah, it's almost like the werewolves are trying to save their own portion of the planet. It's not like they're trying to save everyone. They're just trying to save themselves. Like they're rapidly, their world is this sinking ship, and they're just trying to, you know, they're now in this lifeboat, and they're trying to, you know, save the lifeboat, but throwing everyone else out that they can, you know, to save their own skin sometimes. But I don't know. What have you been playing?
What about you, Jason? You want to chime in on this conversation?
If you what you're playing recently? I'm kind of curious. I've seen a couple of your videos.
I have nothing to contribute of any value.
Oh,
I think you're muted. A bit.
Hello?
No, I could hear him.
I can hear
There.
Hey, man.
How loud am I? Am I loud enough, or
you loud enough. I can hear you.
what about now?
You sound glorious to me, my friend.
Okay.
I may have just had some lag there.
Oh, I have. This is my first Hangout, so I'm not really sure if my settings are good enough or high enough on the sound part.
Doing just fine for me.
Are you in a game right now, or are you running a game?
I'm in 2 games, or 3 actually.
Oh wow.
Pathfinder Shadowrun 4th edition, and then a RuneQuest Conan universe game, which
Dude, that
is
sounds
really fun.
amazing.
It is. It is amazing. It's very fun.
Yeah, how is I own a PDF copy of Shadowrun, but I've never played it. How does it play?
It's I've only played one session, so I'm not really an expert, but I had a lot of fun playing it. We had a good time. It tends to focus a lot on the gear, I guess, more than some other systems, and a lot of you can outfit your guns to have smart links and flamethrowers and just whatever you want, pretty much. So if you like that kind of thing, the combat isn't super tactical, but it is very it's very well developed combat system.
Oh.
Yeah, in 5th edition, you can choose, if you prioritize your money as your number one thing, you can start the game with $450,000. So you just have $500,000, and you're probably oh, well, that won't get you too far, until you realize, oh, wait, for $1,000, I could buy an anti-vehicle rocket launcher. What else am I going to buy? And then, you just filled up your page, and you're oh, I still have $200,000 left.
Well,
I hope the Mage cool as I am, because this is
totally
ridiculous.
would play a weapons merchant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also the I suppose to sort of balance that out. Now that I think about it, it is of course a futuristic thing where after every mission you have to destroy anything linking you to any if you used a gun to kill people, you probably have to hide that gun, if not destroy it, and all the ammo that you had. So you can also go through things pretty fast in Shadowrun.
Mm-hmm.
What character you were playing?
Me? My character is an elf. She's a Chinese elf, and she plays kind of like this confidence man or woman, as it were, who she spent her early years. Well, she used to be like a sim star. Before there, I don't know. Shadowrun, the thing is, it's got this big old setting that you kind of have to get acquainted with to even begin to play it. So they have their own kind of timeline where, I don't know, around 2020-ish, people started being born with these different meta types like elves, orcs, dwarves, things like that. So they kind of took D&D and mixed it in with cyberpunk.
Mm-hmm.
So everything you have the Matrix, and you have but you also have magic mixed in with that, and you have technomancy and just all sorts of crazy shit combined together. And so anyway, my character was she used to be on a SimStar before there was this crash in 2065 or something where everybody lost everything on the internet, and so nobody knows who she is now, so she's kind of just laying low. That's pretty much her deal.
Does she have an alias then? Her real name is unknown.
Yeah, she does. She has her real name, but she goes by Sapphire because
I like it.
Just because.
Does she have blue eyes by any chance?
She does not, but
Ooh.
she could. I mean, you can get whatever you want implant-wise. I mean, it's you've seen Total Recall, where she touches the pen to the thing and changes her nails or her eyes. You can do that kind of thing in Shadowrun, so.
Oh, sorry, I took that the other way for a second. I thought you meant have a little dude inside your chest.
You can do that too, actually. You can have a full. You can have a cyber chest cavity with a hole in it to stick stuff. It's very
yes, I would like
open
that
in that regard. Yeah.
The gear seems really well thought out. I mean, because it's funny, because when you look at another sci-fi setting, I don't know, Star Wars, it's not it sounds like Shadowrun's actually a lot more hard sci-fi. Because I mean, that stuff makes sense. But with what's a hyperdrive? What's a alluvial damper and a
it's a little god in the boxy.
Right.
Yeah, they throw in all these terms, but they don't explain it. But it seems like the gear in that is very.
It's a little more grounded, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it more than I thought I would. I always thought, oh, it'd be cool, but I think my big concern is that it's going to turn into get too repetitive with the mission types. That's my only concern, because you are a runner, which means you do corporate jobs for these corporate backers who want you to go sabotage other companies and that kind of thing. So that it could get a little tedious. I'm hoping that my GM will not make it that way though.
Yeah, I think it's one of those games and situations where it's a bit contingent upon, in my opinion anyway, the players to. I guess every group's different, but I see it as the player, and of course the GM should come up with stuff too, but the players should come up with their own stuff. Like, oh yeah, I'm a runner, and of course I'm going to take most of the missions, if not all the missions that the GM or out of game or in game gives me, but I also have my reasons or my background, or I'll introduce my own NPCs or contacts, or be like, hey, da 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 da,
That's a good point.
bring
Yeah.
something to the table. Don't always, of course, come. I'm sure you guys can relate. The players that just come to, as Anderwood says, leech off the mind of the GM. That's how my experience with Vampire are that way. It's
Really?
a really, really awesome game, but vampires
Took the mic out of you.
That's sad.
vampires
'cause
don't.
That's the
Vampires don't
perfect
have.
game for players to go and take initiative and just get all crazy with it. I wouldn't want my GM
exactly.
telling me what to do and where to go in that game.
No.
Yeah. And but some people just don't do it. And vampires, essentially, they're not like werewolves or even arguably changelings that have a niche or a purpose or something to fill in life. They don't have a job to do. They don't belong anywhere. They're just almost a parasite or a leech. That's what they are. And they don't have a purpose. You have to make your own purposes. There's no built-in, you must do this in the overall game,
Right. Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why I love the Dresden verse I've been gushing about recently on my channel, is the fact that it kind of gets around that problem you guys have been talking about in character creation, that you actually come up with a couple of stories that your players have been involved in together before the game starts. So you've already got something you can draw upon later on and bring out, have consequences that come in a few sessions down the road. That's great.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking of something similar as you were talking about that. The Edge of the Empire, Star Wars Edge of the Empire, does a lot of that sort of same thing where your background is really you have you're not given a choice about you need to have a background for this for the game. I like how they set up the way it's set up is you start when they have the character creation section. Character concept is right there on the top. Then you have character concept, background.
I like that too.
I mean, I like that it erases this sort of mentality that I'm going to start with my stats.
Right.
Okay, and then I'm going to, okay, well, bad example because I guess Mutant Epoch is kind of that way. But I can forgive Mutant Epoch.
No, well, if you're an experienced role player and you know what you like, then it's good. But for new people or for people coming into a game, like you said, first impressions and what is seemingly the most. I've had players that, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Fiasco, but long story short, it's a GM-less game. It's I'm not going to explain the rules, but as you can imagine, it's pretty freeform. And I'll have players that play characters great in that. They'll role play to the nines, and they'll roll with whatever and be funny and epic, and then it comes to something like this, and they're just glued to their sheet. Once you have dots in front of you, it nails you. I don't know what it is. It's one player in particular that it's all, dude, just role play, man. Come on. I know you can do it, and I know you have fun doing it. But yeah, I think the Edge of the Empire, it's funny because that's such a simple thing that doesn't seem, of course, having a background, and you have something going on in the background. Well, that doesn't seem Star Wars specific at all, but the way that it lays it out and the way that I visualize it working correctly in the game will very much give you a Star Wars feel. Like when Han has the debt with Jabba the Hutt that's impending, and eventually Luke, I've got to choose between, my Jedi training and my friends. He has that family. People have obligations.
Lando
that sure, you can
Calrissian.
choose not to answer them, but they ain't going away, and it's there on the paper, and you're the one that picked it, so you gotta own up to it.
And it's not something that can be easily resolved either. That's the thing, isn't it? It's something that you've really got to work at to get off your back.
And will always surface at the most inopportune of times.
Yeah.
I got lost in the void there for a second. I apologize. Lost in time and space.
Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
What year is it?
Didn't lose an arm or anything in the wormhole?
Yeah, you have to make sure that this isn't some alternate dimension you just stepped in. Okay, your name is Jason. You have to go through and make sure everything's right. Anyway.
Sorry to break off another tangent, but have any of you guys played Mage?
Hold on, I'll be right back.
Which one?
Awakening, I'm going to say.
Yes, as a matter of fact, that is the last thing I was playing, and it's in fact the only thing that I've, the only campaign that I've been a player in like about a year and a half, 2 years, just because I always end up running games. Oh yeah.
Because it's technically the first White Wolf game I've ever got a chance to play. Again at the convention last week, I managed to get into a game on it. Yes.
I just got it this week. I haven't even looked at it yet.
I really thought it was a really cool game for getting people to think outside the box, to teach like players to kind of open up what they think is possible. Because the GM was like to me, just like, whatever you can think of, right? It was for a one shot. You can pretty much do within your discipline, within your sphere. And I was like, anything? Anything. Okay. So I went to town.
So you played it, you said?
Yeah. One of the coolest things I did was like a subtle thing, but I really liked it because my guy could interact with death, but he had an understanding of death and death magic, and he detected this dead guy in like a mansion, and I was trying to communicate this point to the players in the game, and they were like, well, how are we supposed to know where he is? You can see him. And I was like, okay, right. What can I do? And we had this like floor plan, like actually in game. And I was like, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast a spell on the map because I could control matter. And I was like, I'm going to have it so that there's like this little mote of light just kind of follows where he is on the map, like a Harry Potter Marauders map thing.
That's awesome.
And I was like, in most systems, you just couldn't do that. You wouldn't be able to get away with that. I was like, oh, this is really cool. I'm glad I got those.
Totally, and it fits in with the themes and the motif of the game too, because it's all about higher learning and uncovering secrets and totally.
What kind of mage do you play? Just there.
I was playing the Awakening, which is the New World of Darkness one. Yeah. And I had a Mastigos. They're the Path of the Nightmare. And I have I suppose a habit, or for better or worse, it's something that I realized recently about when I make player characters, I'll take like the class as it were, and I'll be like, I'll be a barbarian, but I'm gonna be like the most untypical barbarian ever, which
I'm gonna be the nigger barbarian. I should use poetry as my sword. I should use verse as my shield.
I'm not like a barbarian actually at all.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it.
Yeah.
He has the most savage haikus of anyone.
I have a habit of doing that. But what my thing is if I'm playing a new system, my first character in that would be a character that helps me learn the system. So when I first played Dresden back like last year, I played an amnesiac who didn't know anything about magic, so I could learn how everything worked in character. Which is quite cool, but unfortunately for the players, is my guy was also technically an emissary, so he was sort of a nobleman in a sort of society of the supernatural. So people would come up to me and ask me to help them with things, and I wouldn't have any idea what they were on about, and it would cause so much grief for everybody else.
Sounds like good scenes. Well, I mean,
It was.
it happened all the time. Maybe not, but
Because at one point in the story, they left me alone with this really important NPC who had strong influences in the city of London and was basically the go-to guy who could have you killed. You know, he was the Don, and they left me alone for 5 minutes. And when they came back, we got kicked out of the Tower of London. And they were like, "What did you do?" And I was like, "Well, I told them everything." What do you mean you told them everything? I told them literally everything that he asked me. Because he said, as an emissary, you cannot lie. So I literally just blurted out the entire thing that I thought was going on.
oh, it's funny.
Like,
But yeah, I had my character was a taxi driver, and he very much did not accept his mageness, his mage state. He didn't think that because you could wield magic or fell into it that it made you better by any means, and he sort of disdained anyone that used what I refer to in character and out of character as vulgar magic, like just in your face, and either if you're proud about magic or if you do things that are just so against nature. My dude would sort of he wasn't really down for that sort of thing. Yeah, he was a taxi driver, and he was an American, but he was born in India. So I did have an accent. I probably sounded more like Salah from Indiana Jones than anything else, but it worked. And
I thought you were going to say he was an American who was a taxi driver in India.
That would be awesome. That would be really good.
Perhaps in the next season, that's where I'll take him.
I don't play taxi driver often, but when I do,
give us 50 years, and that's where we're all going to be in India driving cabs.
It was fun though, because driving was my only ability that was higher than. I have like 4 out of 5 dots in drive, so
That's awesome.
I got to over a couple times of the campaign. The first session we're attacked by a bunch of a possessed suburban community, and I unfortunately had to drive over a small child, who then I bought the ghost familiar merit, and she ended up haunting my car. So my dude was sort of a summoner. He had some ghosts that he could call upon, and he did space was my main arcanum, which is very useful. It's one of the most useful ones to combine with other things, because you can like scry and jump through wormholes and do your spells from far away. And I did a bit of time as well.
In the one shot I played in, I was a death and matter mage, so I could mess about with matter.
The Moros, I believe they're called.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. Apparently, like because it was pre-gen character the GM had made. And apparently, my character died on the slab and then woke up and realized he could control death, which sounded pretty cool. I was like, that's pretty awesome. And we all had Egyptian code names as well. So I was Anubis, and I was completely cool with that.
Sounds fun.
It was great. But she was at the GM I was speaking to her afterwards. She was saying that usually the mage mechanics are quite like they're not a light. It's not a light rule system. It's quite in depth once you get into it. And the version that we play was stripped down in some areas to allow us to obviously get through a session in 4 hours without be rolling dice all the time.
Yeah, and that's what.
If you found that when you played.
A little bit, yeah. I'm totally the kind of GM. Well, to give you guys, I guess, a bit of context, the group that I play with, we have great some of the role players are really good, and we always have a fun time. But there's one other person in my regular group now that runs games, but he borrows my books. I'm the guy with the books, the guy that runs games, pretty much. I'm sure you guys can relate or have been that guy before, or know people that are that guy. So my players don't, for better or worse. I've actually learned to roll with it, and for horror games, I think it's great. But my players don't generally read the books other than what I tell them. So if I don't want to have a mechanic in there, it doesn't. It just doesn't exist. Come up, and no one, and I don't have any rules lawyers or anyone that gets all weird about it or anything like that. So
that must be nice.
So yeah, I've been playing World of Darkness for a while, so I guess I'm pretty. I hear people online saying that it's a medium to fairly high crunch game.
but I don't feel like it is. I don't know if that's because I'm so familiar to it, or if they're like Changeling the Lost, for example. There's a lot of things going on in it, but you don't have factor in all those at once. You're not worried about someone losing clarity and someone gaining weird and someone's keeper and a hedge door opening up and their true fetch and all the courts at this, like, you know, just like any RPG, you focus on, you know, in my experience anyway, there's no need, even if there is a lot of factors, don't factor them all in at once.
It could also be the character sheets if you've because there's quite a lot of information on there. Like they're not a one-page job. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of information. And that could be why people would say it's crunchy, because you know when you roll up a character, you're not done in 5 minutes. It does take a while to put it all together and construct that history and everything.
Yeah.
From what I can see, because obviously I've not played in a World of Darkness campaign myself.
No, you're right. It takes like a whole session if you're going to do it. Like, you know, you need to devote an entire session to creation if that's what you're going to do. If you're going to do it all there together.
I imagine. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say that I'm not sure if people who call this medium to high crunch have really played in what is really a high crunch system. Like, oh god, like Rifts. Okay, like that's high crunch. Okay, like that is just. I mean, I've played in some games there. Now I know I'm probably gonna make you upset, Jason, but I don't know. And to be fair, I didn't.
Okay, you can bash GURPS. Go for it.
Now, okay. Now here's the thing, though.
Out comes the bashing.
I didn't pass character creation, so I cannot say that the system itself is very crunchy. But for me personally, I had a lot of difficulty trying, and it could have also been the GM too, because the GM was really fussy. Like, I got to the end of my character creation, I had spent like literally, I spent days coming up with getting all the numbers right into where I finally wanted them to be. And then the GM's like, "Nah, I just don't like the way you did this part. Like, this doesn't." And I'm like, "Okay, why couldn't you tell me that while I was doing it?" Like, I don't know.
You really have to sit down with your GM like the first time, because the thing is, especially if you look at the core rulebooks, I mean, there's like a bajillion and one choices, and not all of them are there for every campaign. It's kind of more like an encyclopedia of advantages and skills, you know. So if you pick something and the GM's like, I don't want that in my campaign, and you've spent all this time, like, you know, coming up with a concept and
calculate
stuff,
go
so
back.
that's frustrating. It's bad GMs and fussy GMs and GURPS are not a good combo.
Yeah, maybe that probably was what it was, because I think what it was is that I probably also, I took too much time probably, just trying to get everything just so. Like, I really want, you know, I had this idea, and then, you know, I wanted to put it into a character, and I'm like, well, you know, I don't know.
What was your character?
Well, the guy was going to run one that's, you know how the core setting is the Infinite Earths setting.
Right.
I love the idea. I love the idea of the Infinite Earths setting. I had this great idea of being this lowly, you know, maintenance worker from God, what was it? It's that sort of sort of like Shadowrun setting, a little bit, that has I can't remember. It was dominated by Japanese a lot of times. I can't remember the name of the setting, but I wanted to make this character who was this, you know, this maintenance worker in this really repressive sort of pseudo-communistic sort of state, who, like, his big thing is like the country is so polluted that, like, everyone goes, you know, a lot of times people go to work in gas masks because walking through the street is dangerous.
Yeah.
So, like, he's actually, not only does he do that, but he's specialized in hazmat. Like, he's the maintenance worker who has to go into the sewers where there's radioactive material down there, and, like, because they don't care about the environment in this setting. So, like, the idea, one of the things I really wanted to do with him is that, so then when he got transported to this other setting, like he was gonna be so shocked by how clean everything is, and like what the sky, like the sky's blue, and what colors, like everything's so colorful. And I don't know, I spent a lot of time, and I thought it was gonna be really, I really wanted to make it work, and he was just like, well, this I don't think he's really gonna fit in this. And I'm like, really? But I think he's so cool, and I don't know. He didn't. Maybe I think the thing is, it's the thing where he's not clearly giving us, because he told us make whatever you want, right?
Right.
That's the make whatever you want, and then but then he's like, well, I
spend 2 days making it, so I can tell you can't use that character.
Exactly. It's like, be more specific than what you want. Tell me what you want. Be clear about it.
Yeah, that's the thing I like about GURPS is, I mean, it's definitely not perfect, but it allows you to really do things that aren't possible in a lot of other systems, like having a hazmat worker who can transport to another dimension. Like how the hell does that even? There are very few systems that could handle something that bizarre.
Yeah. Well, it's probably. That is one of the things I definitely agree with you. It's the most out of I own Fate, I own Savage Worlds, but it's the one system where not only does it make it universal, but it makes it like you don't have to buy, like with Savage Worlds, like if you want to do a sci-fi setting, okay. A lot of times, if the GM is, you would have to buy like the sci-fi edition to it, the sci-fi companion, or if you wanted, you don't have to, but it makes it so much easier. There's so much more detail in just the core book of GURPS that you don't almost even need some of the other, stuff, because you can just do so much out of it.
It has the settings built into it, or at least enough of a snapshot to flush it out from there.
There's enough pieces there.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It's just.
It is a little more like if you really. I mean, there's so many choices that it's like going into a cafeteria where you have like 101 entrees and just picking what you want and putting it on this small tray. So I think like my friend, when he picked it up, he was just like, what do I do with all this? I don't even know what this is. And so he was super intimidated. But I actually haven't even played a full game in 4th edition. I played in 3rd edition, and 3rd edition, like we just had the core rulebook, which was half the size of 4th edition's. So it helped me to process that so that when I came to 4th edition, I wasn't like hit in the face with this brick of rules,
Well, and what's funny is this is a testament, though, to GURPS too. Is that I actually own a lot of GURPS stuff. I haven't actually played in any game of GURPS. Past character creation, but I own so much GURPS stuff. I own like all those. I mean, some of those source books are just like for setting information, and some of the ideas you can pick out of them are just incredible.
Yeah, it's the greatest game you'll never play because it's hard as hell to find people to play it with.
Hey, I'd be willing to give it another shot. I just don't know. You need
to get a GM like Sebastian who is like a vet who cannot sit there and fuss over stupid things, who just knows it inside and out, Yeah.
Is that Mr. Bash we're talking about there?
No, it's No Inquisitor.
Oh, the guy who had run Mutant Epoch before as well.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I spoke to him briefly before. Yeah.
Both Canadian, both Sebastian, I believe.
Yeah.
Not at all confused.
Never seen at the same place at the same time. Interesting.
Also, that they also may be Batman, but that remains to be seen. So I got to actually take off here in probably about 10 minutes or so. Got to go eat some dinner, but yeah, I'm excited to get this this game started. We could probably talk about scheduling stuff here in a minute when I turn it off live. I don't want to bore the viewers to death with a calendar.
Like I said, I like to join, guys, but it also depends on scheduling, because obviously I'm UK based. You guys are from across the pond, I believe.
Yes.
You know, but I always want to play more stuff. You should see my book collection. In the last 2 years, it has grown. It's had kittens. I've got so much stuff now, and I've just got back from the convention, and I'll be doing a video soon to show all my haul. But Jesus, man, I've got more books now than I'm probably ever going to be able to play.
Yeah, I've got enough books just in the past couple months to last my whole life now.
That's a good problem to have, though. If the apocalypse happens tomorrow, you'll have entertainment.
Unless you drop your glasses and break them like in the Twilight Zone, then you're fucked.
Oh,
That's how I feel about the Werewolf the Forsaken game. I feel, and Changeling. I feel like both those games you could play for a very long time before they got boring. They have a lot of meat to them.
What's the longest campaign you guys have ever been involved in?
It's pathetic. God, not any more than a month, probably. I honestly, to be perfectly honest, I've only really honestly recently been exposed to the YouTube RPG Brigade, and even then, I don't
speak for all of us because I am not the Brigade manifested in person, but happy to have you with us, good man. Happy to have you on board.
Yeah, well, it's just, for me, it's like, and I haven't played, I'm actually coming off of a time where I have this long period of time I haven't actually role-played for quite a long time. I think I haven't actually played in a role-playing game, I think, for 4 or 5 years. So.
Dude.
It's all good. I played 4th edition, but that I don't count that. I just want to block that out and wipe it away.
No, well, I'm not counting. What I was thinking of, the one I have played Encounters, and I have D&D Encounters, and I have played Pathfinder Society, but I am not including. I'm not counting that. That does not absolutely.
Pathfinder Society. Power Gaming Society.
I don't even want to think about it, honestly. It's just, yeah.
Yeah,
I was desperate, man. I needed my fix.
I was desperate. That's why I played 4th edition for like 2 years, on and off.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I want to talk about here before we end this, it almost came up a couple times, but how, in your experience, Andrew, or anyone that's I guess maybe more familiar with the book than I am, how do you think the Mutant Epoch is as far as the mechanics? How crunchy do you think it is?
I never considered it very crunchy. It's probably, I think it's less crunchy than Pathfinder, for example. I think it's kind of in that sort of crunchiness range. I don't know. Honestly, it was one of the sort of games I didn't even really notice the mechanics a lot. It's a percentile system. It's a pretty basic percentile system. I don't know. It's been a little bit since I've run it, but I think looking through the book, I could give you a more fair assessment of its crunchiness again, just to remind myself of some of the mechanics. But I don't remember it being very crunchy, in my opinion.
Good enough for me. All right. Well, I'll probably take this off live. So thank you guys for hanging out and talking with me, and thanks to anyone that's watching this.
Thanks for tuning in.
Oh, what is going on? That was really weird.